everybody. Thanks for tuning into Border City Rock Talk, where you get great news, great interviews, great interviewees with sometimes a comedic touch. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, the like button, and comment below. Today, I've got a rock star of a different kind of an angle. I've got the man behind the scenes of many rock stars. He's worked with Airborne from Australia, Black Sabbath, Ozzy, Quiet Riot, Seether, Sebastian Bach. I'm going down the list. Wilson Phillips, everybody. We've got Bob Marlette on the show today. How are you doing, Bob?
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm doing very well today. I'm on the island of Martha's Vineyard having my winter vacation. So,
It's kind of funny where I was going to go with this at the beginning because when actually you know who the reason I've heard your name over the over the years reading Circus magazine and all that stuff that you've worked with a lot of the people that subscribe to this channel. Not you work with people that follow the channel like the genre. So, anyways, I was talking to somebody, and then no, I wasn't talking to him. That'd be a lie. I wasn't talking to John Five, by the way, but I saw an interview with John, and he mentioned your name about 4 days ago. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna start getting into the people behind the scenes. And so I messaged you and you got back to me and you said, yeah, no problem. I'm on vacation on the East Coast. And I thought to myself, wait, that doesn't sound right. We're Canadian. I'm on the border. So anytime we go on vacation, we go southwest. So you're on the
yeah,
East Coast.
I went the wrong way. Yes, I got confused.
So you have a home on Martha's Vineyard. Is that what you're doing? Or you
Yeah,
just
that's
rent or
we go we spend as much time as we can. I love the island here. I've my wife and I have been coming here for about 25 years, and we just love it here. We try to spend our summers on the island if I can make sure I don't book anything to work in the summer season. It's just spectacular here, and I like it even in the winter. But my wife's mother lives on the island full
oh,
time,
okay.
so we're here as much as we can be. So.
Right on. Um, One question I was thinking to myself, I kind of I think I know the answer if I even to look into it, but whenever you see an album jacket, you open it up from all these bands that you've produced, um, tell the viewers the difference between an engineer, mixer, and a producer, just in general terms.
Well, it is pretty, the way I describe it is, it's the producer's responsibility to for everything.
Yeah.
But um but producers don't have to know how to do anything other than facilitate making the record. So, in other
Okay.
words, producers don't need to know how to engineer. They don't need to know how to write songs or play an instrument or anything. I was one of those guys. I just loved all aspects of it. So that's why I engineer, I play, I write, all of the aspects, as well as the producing, of overseeing. The analogy is that it's more like a director in film.
Okay.
In film, the director's responsible for everything, and
Okay.
the producer is more of in film is more of a just making sure that the director gets everything that he wants and make sure they stay in budget. But
Okay.
in records, I just I loved everything about making records. I loved everything because I started out as a musician. That was my
Right.
it's and I started songwriting very early in my life too. So, and as a matter of fact, that's I moved to Los Angeles with the I was in a band, the sort of an early version of Quiet Riot. That's who I moved to LA with, was Rudy Sarzo and Frankie Vanelli, and we moved to LA together. And then so I started, like I said, I started out on stage, and then I got very lucky fairly early on and got my sort of first big break. I was playing keyboards for Al Stewart, your Cat, Time Passages, that guy.
Hmm.
And but that was my first platinum record that I ever worked on. Was that, although I made my first record in 1972. I'm
Wow, I was
I'm I'm
one. I think I
I'm
bought
old.
that. You don't look
I'm
old. I guess the
I'm
water
old.
on the East Coast is good.
Well, I just turned 70. December 7th, I
Wow,
turned
happy birthday.
70. Yeah,
Birthday.
thank you very much. But so anyway, yeah, I started on stage, and it's like I've always loved stage, but you know, the ever since the first time I got into the studio, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I love this. So I've always loved that. And so when I got to LA, I transitioned, sort of over time from being a stage key, player to then becoming a session musician. And that's when I ended up doing like Tracy Chapman's first two records, Wilson Phillips, Rick Springfield, all sorts of stuff. And then,
All the death
um,
metal stuff, right?
right, exactly. Yeah. And it's funny because people that know me for, Rob Zombie and Manson and and all the Sabbath and Rob Halford, for all the heavier records that I've done over my life, they're like sometimes shocked when they find out, well, wait a second,
Yeah,
what are you doing working on Tracy Chapman and all this kind of stuff?
yeah,
And yeah, as a matter of fact, uh, I produced Cheryl Crow too back in the day.
right.
Wrote and produced stuff with her. Basically, as you can tell, I've been doing this a long time, and I just love making music, all different kinds. I did the transition into rock was more of a case of when a lot of times you're just led by what comes to you when the phone
Right.
rings or you meet somebody or things happen and you just like, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that, I'll do this. And I and actually what led me more into the rock stuff was coincidentally John Five.
Oh,
um yeah, because um John was in a band with Rudy Sarzo, um and I'm blanking on the name, but it'll eventually come to me. That Sun Kings was the name of this band.
yeah.
And so Rudy had asked me to come and hang out and help write and produce, the Sun Kings, because they got signed to a label and they were having some trouble just getting all the pieces to fit together. So I went and met with them, and I met John Five, and I was like, you know what, John, you're really good. You come with me. So I kind of stole him from that, and
Yeah.
then we put together this band called Red Square Black,
Okay.
and and that was sort of uh, in making that particular record. Then all of a sudden, that's where Rob Halford heard that record, and then Rob Halford led to my friendship with Tony Iommi, and then coincidentally, then that led to Black Sabbath. So the, that's the beauty of a musical career. Sometimes you just never know where it's going to go. It's like, I've always said, if like, the secret to the whole thing is when the phone rings, you answer it and say yes, even
Yeah.
if you don't have a clue of what you're doing. You just say yes, and I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So,
Like a domino branching effect, right?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. But that, I love that. That always made it so much fun for me because you just never knew what was coming next.
And you don't know
So
who they know that you're going to meet.
exactly. Yep.
So to kind of sum it up, a producer would be like famous rock producer Christopher Watkins asking for more cowbell.
Right. That's
Uh,
in a lot of ways, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's like, you know what? We could use a little tambourine in this song, and
yeah,
it's like, Well, it's like I said, there, the term producer is such a wide, a wide thing. Some guys are really good at doing all sorts of stuff, and some guys are just great at being able to spot it,
Right. Yeah.
and like a lot of times I use Rick Rubin in this discussion about it because Rick's I think Rick's real attribute was always the fact that he could just sort of spot, oh, that's it. That's cool. Do that. Because
Yeah.
Rick didn't write or engineer, do any of that stuff. But he had a great sense of spotting it when it was right.
The intuition.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Right.
Yeah, because don't forget, a lot of it, it's just sort of having an instinct of and that's when I think about my career, it's like just having an instinct of like that's the song that's going to be the breakout, that's the hit, and we need to make this just like this, so
It just came to me. So back in the day, or not even the day, when you have tapes and records and stuff and all that stuff, organization. So is the producer involved in what song follows another song? Because that's very important on a 12 track album. What starts off the album, what ends, what's in the middle, what comes next.
right. But it's funny that that was definitely part of the job, but that's also kind of become somewhat obsolete
Yeah,
in
this
contemporary
day.
record making, because in the old days that was very important in the running of an LP,
Yeah,
so you had side one, what's your lead
side
off
two.
track, where are you going to place your big single,
Yeah,
and because you know with that, along that lines of thought, right, the a lot of times if the band only had one song, they had one hit, the rest of the record sucked, right? you would
yeah,
put you would put that song very first, so everybody go, oh, I know that song, and it's like the rest of it didn't matter as much.
yeah,
But for a band that had great, an entire great record, then it became way more important about pacing the record, of
yeah.
having the flow of the record, and they may not even put the biggest single until the third or fourth song of
Right,
side
right.
one, or even sometimes you place it to side two. You just if you had
Yeah.
the product. So
And like you're saying, these days they're releasing singles quite often. Just
yeah,
a lead
so
off
it's
single
not,
on YouTube and
yeah, and a lot of bands nowadays, it's just like their philosophy is that even though they may make a whole record of material, it's just literally based off of uh releasing singles. And so every 4 to 6 weeks there's another single, and then after you've released all of the singles separately, then you sort of formulate the record. And as we see, there's somewhat of a resurgence of vinyl, and
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's coming back. And
Right.
I'm absolutely the wrong guy to ask about, vinyl versus this or that, because, it's like I always remember, because I made, for years and years and years, I made all the albums we made on tape.
Right, right.
And I hated tape because
Yeah,
it would deteriorate,
yep,
and if you had a record that you worked on forever, it would literally, that's why you had to make slaves of things, so you would work on a slave, and then when you went to mixing, you go back to the original, master
yeah,
24 track,
right,
so it would sound good again.
right,
So I'm
right.
not just so your audience knows, I am a purist who is not a purist.
Right.
To me, I am a purist about the songs, the performances, the energy, the passion, but I am not a necessarily a purist about, technology. To me,
Right.
technology is just what I just want the best tools in front of me, whatever they may be, whatever the
Right.
tool that helps me get the job done.
Right.
Honestly, that's the priority is just that I have the tools that I need. That's why, for instance, when digital got good enough and we sort of, transformed into a digital universe, I was
Right.
very happy by that. I love that because it gave me more flexibility to make
Mhm.
to design things the way that I wanted and the ease of making things happen.
Yeah, no, definitely for sure. Um, I don't know what to ask next. Well, let's talk about Randy Rhoads. You've worked with so many huge, huge stars. We talked about this before we came on, and you're tell the viewers a story how you actually forgot you worked with Randy Rhoads.
Well,
Coincidentally, I interviewed his sister Kathy recently, and Randy's still he's still with us. But yeah, tell us that story.
yeah, it's funny because so well, like I said, when I moved to LA with Rudy and Frankie, and you know when we got to LA, we formed another little band that we had uh, going on with. And at the time, my girlfriend at the time was Tony Childs. She was signed to A&M. And so we put a band together with Tony and her and Rudy and Frankie. We had a band for a little while, but right after that, that's when I got the job to play with Al Stewart and with him. And so I went in that direction, and then Rudy and Frankie found their direction with the Rudy playing with Ozzy, and then obviously the connection between Randy and Rudy, and it's funny because they were doing the first record, and they called me in to do some added, like keyboard and just added fairy dust in on the record. And so I actually ended up doing those sessions, and Randy was there obviously, and all of it. And I had completely forgot I had done that. And then when the Quiet Riot guys decided to do that sort of reunion record that I did with them in the '90s sometime, excuse me. Um, and it was so funny because when I saw Kevin Dubrow, I was like, because the first day we were hanging out and sort of getting to know
Right.
each other, and Rudy and Frankie, and we were all sort of laughing. And Kevin came in the room, and I'm like, "Oh, hey man, it's great to meet you." And he looks at me, great, dude. You actually worked with us on the, he remembered all that stuff, and then I'm like, "Oh yeah." It's like, oh yeah, I guess I did do that, didn't I? It's like, and then
Yeah.
he said something that I thought was very funny. It's about that of all the people that have claimed that they worked with Randy who didn't, you're the one that didn't even remember actually doing it, and you did, So I I was pretty crazy, but then sort of, I sort of remembered, oh yeah, I guess I did it, but I was I was very busy back then, and I was just trying to stay afloat, and I doing every session I possibly could, and so
Right. So, I mean, just a quick question, then I'll move on. Do you specifically remember Randy's personality, or was he just in the room kind of doing his thing, and you didn't realize he was going to be this famous guitar legacy. So were you just working on things and you just
It, you
passing by
know,
and
it's I think you're sort of right in the way that at the end of the day, when you work with so many people over the years, right?
yeah,
There's some people that stick with you because you're in the moment and you're like, wow,
right,
that person is really special. And the truth was is that I really in that environment, I wasn't looking at him going, holy shit, what a great guitar player. Sorry, is this a language?
you can swear. It's okay.
Okay, sorry.
I
I
actually
forgot.
I actually promote swearing. So
You're right, right. Yeah, I forgot to ask you at the beginning whether or not
no,
it
no, it's
was
all
a,
good.
PG,
No, no,
Um,
no.
so it and it is true that sometimes the legacy, because you're just people making music together in a room,
Yeah,
and a lot of times it's time or performances or whatever that eventually makes you legendary in that way, and so um at the time I didn't really go, oh, that guy's gonna be a legend. It was more just like he was obviously really, really good. But that was the same time though that a band that we were sort of competing with, at the same time was Van Halen,
yeah.
and so you're kind of in this circle of all these great players, but they hadn't yet become,
The legend.
who, yeah, they hadn't become that. So it was just another dude, that you're like, I had this conversation with Nikki Six, right? And we were talking about how we were laughing how that you would your band, you'd go out at night and you put up posters and little
Right.
flyers around, and then the next band would wait till you were done and then tear yours down and put theirs
Yeah.
over the top. And we
Yeah.
were laughing about how we used to all do that for all these. Now you look back and you go, oh my God, that was like, that was Motley Crue and that was Van Halen and that was, but to us, we were just guys making music in bands,
Yeah.
doing our thing. It's like it's history that gets to put the legacy moniker on something. So
Yeah. No,
you
for
never
sure.
know.
You never know, right? Exactly. And we're talking about who the branching off thing. So, I'd asked you a question previous to our interview, and it's generally I don't do that, but I thought because you've worked with so many, is there a story of a session producing where it's just an unreal story, like something, similar to throwing TVs on a hotel room windows in Hollywood back in the day? Is there anything that sticks out? It's crazy. I'm
Yeah,
sure there are.
honestly, there's a shit ton, but it's kind of like this. I mean, you got to remember a lot of times the the craziness and the mayhem that would go on was I was usually the guy in charge.
Right.
I was sort of, so a lot of times those stories that seemed hysterical for the bands and the other play, they were just like, oh, guys, please, we got to get going here, right? We're burning money, we're burning time, it's like, and you want to go do, and actually one that always comes to mind that I always loved was, so I'm producing Black Sabbath at the time, right?
Right.
And there were a couple of things that were just sort of stuck out. One was the very first day that we were all in the studio together. It was the four of them and a good 30 or more people in the room, the handlers, the assistants, everything. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking around the room and I'm just like, you know what? Everybody shut up if you're not in Black Sabbath, get
Get the
out. Yeah,
yeah,
you're out of here right now. That's it.
yeah,
So the place like cleared out, and it was just the four of them and me. And there was this sort of like kind of few moments of awkwardness because they hadn't really been together in a room like this for decades, right?
right.
And so, and then all of a sudden, Tony looks over, or Ozzy looks over at Tony and goes, "Hey, Tony, remember that time you set Bill on fire?" And then, and then, literally, I kid you not, it was about 2 hours of the most insane Black Sabbath stories. And then,
Wow.
it was just hearing all of the, because it was them reliving all of the moments they had when they were young. And it was just absolutely amazing. And there were several points where I looked around the room and I even said to Ozzy, it's like, I can't believe you guys are still alive.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
considering the chaos, the mayhem, the drugs,
Oh, yeah.
everything, and it was just, it was so amazing, that it which leads to, I've been asked multiple times to write a book, about
Right.
all of these stories and all of this stuff. And I always have sort of had the same response of like, a lot of these stories, even though I was there, they're not my stories to tell, because it's kind of like,
Right.
I'm the therapist, right? It's like I'm not really, I it's not my stuff to tell, and it's like I figure there'll be a day where where I'm old and it's like, okay, let's try. I part of it is I need to do it while I still have my faculties and I can still
Right. Yeah.
remember everything. And but it's just, it's so. But actually, one of the stories that I love that I can tell that I've told before about Ozzy, because I just loved how just like it's so classic Ozzy. So we're at Henson Studios in LA. We're in the mix room and we're doing vocals. And Ozzy was in the room and he's Bob, uh, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. So he
This is
head
going.
heads out to go to the bathroom. And Henson is this kind of a horseshoe complex with these studios sort of dotted around. And the bathroom is up in the corner. We're down here in the mix room. He goes out the door, comes around all the way up to the other side to the bathroom. When he comes back, he gets confused and he goes into the studio on the other side and
Oh,
sits down and starts reading the newspaper. So, and I'm sitting there in like, 5, 10 minutes, 15, pretty soon like 20 minutes. And it's like, Jesus, where'd he go? My God, let's go. So I sent my assistant out to go find him. So he's roaming around and he comes back and Ozzy's nowhere around. It's like, we can't find him. Then the word gets to his handlers that he's missing, and
oh
they
man.
start freaking out because they're like, oh my God, he's left the complex, right? Because that would happen now and again. He would leave
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah. They're like,
everybody's
oh,
like,
not again.
yeah, like, yeah, no, 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 this is not okay, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, so literally half hour goes by, and then the assistant from the session across the hall buzzed over to my assistant to say, hey, did you guys lose Ozzy? Because he's sitting in our room, right? So he was sitting in their room reading the newspaper, right? And my assistant Tim runs over there and he goes, Ozzy, buddy, what are you doing, man? We're in the other room. And he puts the paper down and looks around and he goes, oh yeah, I thought I didn't recognize anybody. Oh, all right. And then he gets walks back to our room. But the thing was, is the band in the other room were just so excited because they thought Ozzy had come over to listen to what they were doing.
Oh
So they
wow.
were, yeah, they were like, "Oh my God, Ozzy loves us. He's hanging out with us." Right?
So
Nah,
he kind of
he was
thought
just
you left
lost.
and he was waiting for you.
Yeah. So he was just, but that was that was the
That's a good
beauty
story.
of, that was the beauty of Ozzy. It was just, he was the most wonderful 6 year
Innocent,
old kid.
innocent, innocent
Yeah. Yeah.
in a like we. I'm not saying innocent in everything, but he was an innocent, free spirit.
Yeah. It was the free spirit was the key.
Yeah,
And a lot of it was but the other thing that would happen, it was that every once in a while he'd get that little look in his eye. You see that little glit in the eye, and you go, "Uh-oh, we're
you know
we're
what I mean.
fucked." Yeah, this this is not going to end well,
Boys, you
because
want
he
to come
would.
back tomorrow?
It was just like, and I we used to laugh about that because I could tell after
Yeah,
moments of him walking in the studio whether it was a work day or not. Because
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
he would
exactly.
just, he'd come in and all he wanted to do is like create havoc and be crazy, and then other days he'd walk in and, "All right, Bob, let's go," and then it's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, okay, we'll get to work then. Just grab it while you can, just make the
yeah,
magic
yeah,
happen."
exactly. You know what? Yeah, exactly. Embrace it when it comes.
But I will tell you this, the key thing was he was really special. He was funny, he was nice, he was cool, he was crazy, but
Yeah,
he was had such a spirit, and it just like, truly one of a kind. And I've been so blessed to, to work with so many truly great artists over the years, and he was like one of the great ones.
yeah. And his craziness, I know what you meant. It was his demons, right? I mean, the demons
Oh yeah.
he fought all
Yeah.
his life. Like when he
Well,
wasn't in that mode, he was just as normal as you and I.
it's kind of like, if when you don't have any limitations on you, and
Right. That's
it changes your psyche and the way you look at
yeah,
things, and he was just, there was nobody said no. And that's one of and it's a double-edged sword, because that's like, it's amazing to not have anybody say no, but it's also can be a real detriment not
yeah.
having guardrails, because a lot of
Somebody that's
times
got your back, right?
we need guardrails. I mean, Sharon, granted, Sharon really was his true only guardrail, because he would
Right.
he would, because sometimes, Sharon would like call me up and say, "How's he doing today?" And I'm like, "Well," and then all of a sudden she'd go, "Put him on the phone right now." It's like, and he would like, he would be
Yeah,
literally scared of her. It was so funny. It was very funny.
right. On the other side of that coin, Bob, I thought of this one. I thought this is a juicy, good question to ask. Has there been anybody, maybe you're willing to maybe name or not, that you started to work with and then the chemistry was okay, we can't work together. We're not doing this, but it was somebody that was big.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
the way I'm
I
thinking, the first
go ahead.
thing I thought about was and no disrespect to what's that the Oasis, but those brothers have a hard time working with each other, right? So yeah, go ahead with your story. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no, no. I was just going to say there have been, and I try not to. It's difficult to, you know. Here's an example of somebody that I thought was actually really good, and we just had a really tough time, partly because I was, he was very dark, and I'm pretty light, meaning
Okay.
that my energy is like, I'm always trying to keep the energy going, get the room going. And I work, it's like the older I got and when I had kids, it's like, you know what?
Right.
I'm gonna I'm gonna work from here to here. And that's
Yeah.
kind of it. It's like, and he didn't want to work in that time frame. And
Oh,
so we just really it was one of those things that we just really didn't click. And it wasn't anything other than just simply, because
boundaries.
yeah, it's everybody has their own sort of like, psyche and mindset, and his and mine did not, not line up, and it's a very big name, and I'm not going to go there, but it's
Yeah.
mostly because I didn't, it wasn't him or it wasn't me. It was the two pieces, like, just didn't really fit together.
Was it the music type and the lyrics and that sort of thing, or was it like the
No, 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 no.
atmosphere in the studio, the things he wanted to do?
It was
I kind of see
more,
where you're
yeah,
going.
it was more that it was more of a case of um we just didn't click on the human side of it. We
I know
didn't,
what you're saying. Yeah.
and because I mean, honestly, there's very creatively, I don't think I've really had, scenarios where I would object to anything, because I've
Okay.
always said that, it's like, my job as a producer is to facilitate your message, your creativity, your,
Right.
what you want to do. My
Hmm.
job, because I use, when a lot of times, in because I like to go speak to, to kids in, at either university or high school or whatever. I like to go, communicate with kids, so I'll do a lot of, guest speaking and stuff like that. And a lot of times I get asked that very question. It's like, how can you go from Tracy Chapman to Black Sabbath, Marilyn Manson to Cheryl Crow, this sort of
Yeah.
wide sort of thing? And I said, well, it's always the same. It's like it's all music.
Right.
And at the core, my job is to facilitate the connection between you as the artist and you, the audience. And it's being able to make sure that, it's like part of the job is sometimes when the artist will get into this sort of very deep rabbit hole of myopic sort of vision of things. It's
Right.
my job to help them break free of that so an audience can connect. It's like,
Right.
because my line is always like, hey, listen, if I don't understand it, how do you expect them to get it?
Yeah,
you
you're the
know
audience right now in the
yeah,
studio.
I represent the audience and the relationship between those. And if I'm looking at you going, what the hell are you doing? I don't get that. How are
Yeah.
they going to get it if I can't get it?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of it, is just, so I've always understood my position. And which kind of leads to another thing that has always been important to me, is that I, unlike other producers, I have tried to stay as invisible as I can. I mean, it's a little hard after doing this many years and this many big records
Yeah.
and stuff,
Mm.
but it's not about me. It's like,
Right.
it's about the music and it's about the artist, and so I've always tried to keep as much of a low profile as I can, because I don't want. It's like when you see the record, a lot of times they'll like, you'll see the producer and they're like, oh, I should listen to this because it's me or what, whoever, right?
Mm.
And it's like, I don't want that. I want you to listen to it because you hear the artist and you go, oh, okay, I'm making a visceral connection with the artist and that. So I've always tried to keep, somewhat of a low profile about it.
right, right. But it's pretty hard. I mean, Bob Rock's on the back of a jacket. Mutt Lang, Bob Marlette. I mean, people are going to assume that the music is going to be great because everything they know about your background is going to be good. So, I wanted to ask you about a couple Canadians. You've worked with Anvil, who Metallica says influenced them. And the unfortunate thing with Anvil is it was getting better, but I mean, it's a documentary a while back where Lips was still working in a food processing plant after all these years. So you're working with Anvil, but recently, I'm sure you've heard the news. Rush is going on tour, and so is Triumph. Any comments on that?
Oh,
No? Okay.
no. And the thing that I will tell you the Anvil story because I always it was pretty funny. So I had never heard of Anvil. I had no clue who Anvil was. I knew their manager, right? And but their manager didn't reach out to me, who and I was friends with him, right? He reached out to my manager,
Oh,
and my manager called me up and said, "Listen, we're sending you, this is back when we had DVD, right?
yeah,
We're going to send you the DVD of this documentary, check it out and see if you want to do this record." And I'm
right.
like, I don't know who it is, whatever, send it out. And
Mhm.
so when when we got the DVD, right, I looked at it and I looked at my wife and I said, "Honey, you watch this. You tell me what you think." Right. So I was in the studio. She watched it. She comes out. She's literally in tears, going, "Oh my God, you have to do this record. They need you. You need to do this
Yeah,
record." Right. And I'm
yeah,
like, and she says, "Just watch the documentary. Watch it. And then so I'm like, oh, all right. I really wasn't that interested. So
yeah,
I ended up watching the document. By the end, I'm like, this is what a great story. I love this. This
yeah.
is so great. So I called Rick, their manager, and I was like, all right, I'll let me go meet with him and we'll see what's up. So they flew me to Toronto, and
Hmm.
then so Lips took me on a tour of everything from the documentary. Like
Oh,
he
wow.
literally took me to the place he was working doing the food
Yeah,
bank stuff, and he took me
yeah,
there, and I was like, "Oh yeah," it's like, and then it's like, and I literally stayed at his house. He wanted me to stay at his house. It was in the documentary, and told me the whole stuff. And getting to know him, he was the best, coolest. I just love that guy.
yeah.
And Robbo, those two guys were just so special. And so then we, had a couple days of pre-production, and I said, "Yeah, what the hell? Let's do this record." And then the rest is history. So
Right on. Well, that's great.
yeah.
I've funny thing is 99% of my subscribers are Americans. I guess that's just the way it is. And I'm in Canada. I'm right on the border. But that's a great Canadian story. I always ask my guests' favorite Canadian band. Do you have a favorite Canadian band or musician or anything
Hmm.
besides Rush? I mean, I'm just saying that because everybody says Rush. And I'm like, we have more than Rush.
It's funny because Rush, to me, as much as I liked and respected them, I was an English prog guy. I was all about
Okay.
yes, yes,
Right.
Genesis, Gentle Giant, all of the sort of
Yeah.
English. I was mesmerized when I was a kid. I was mesmerized,
Mhm.
like, I mean, we're talking like 68, 69, 70. that
Right.
that whole
Yeah.
all the way back, and then carrying on. And but when I was a kid, yes was my, like, I just like, because part of it was, yes was it, it, hearing Rick Wakeman for the first time.
Yeah.
It
I've
was
interviewed
like
Rick.
when I was like 14 or 15 years old, and I had, because I remember I'm a keyboard player. That was my,
Right.
I started out as a keyboard player. That was my thing. So it was, it was all about all of a sudden I'm listening to this guy who at his fingertips, here was the orchestra over here with his mellotron, here was the mini moog, and he was, and it's like, and all of the keyboards, these sort of racks of keyboard stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I love that. And then, yes, I loved the technical, I was primarily in the Bill Bruford, the Bill
Right.
Bruford. It was the Yes album, Fragile and Close to the Edge. Those three, set my path in terms of that genre. But I was also a jazz guy because I would, spend a lot of time being a jazz nerd and all that kind of stuff as a player, which is so funny that I end up doing all these, big rock records and stuff. But I so started out completely on the other side of the fence.
Right.
But before I forget, though, there was two other Canadian bands that I worked with that I really liked a lot. One was Default. I did
Right.
worked with Default, and the other one was a band from. They were fairly close to Toronto, a band called Bleecker Ridge, and I
I've heard of them. Yeah.
yeah, we actually had a pretty big single in Canada. But I love those two bands in Anvil. So all my Canadian experiences have been great. Great bands,
Mhm.
great people. So.
A lot of people don't realize certain bands are Canadian. Like I've interviewed a bunch of people that said, no, I interviewed Mike Reno of Loverboy. He said
Mhm.
everybody thought we were American, and they swore that we played their high school dance in California. He's like,
Right.
wasn't that?
Yeah. So funny. Yeah.
So before I let you go, you're like branching right out. Tell us about the Broadway musical you're working on right now.
Well, and so it's sort of with as my 70th birthday was looming, large in my brain. I'm like, what am I gonna do that's gonna be the biggest left turn that I could make?
Opera.
And yeah, well, yeah, my problem with it is that I just don't like opera. It's like,
My problem
but
with opera is I don't sing, so I would.
well, yeah, that too. It's like
It's got a
I
downfall.
always said that was, that was God's way of keeping me humble. He let me do everything else except sing. So that was the rub on that one. But so one of the things that I do is there's a summer program. It's a performing arts camp in Massachusetts called Summer Stars, and my wife got me into that. And every year we go and volunteer and teach at this Summer Stars performing
Nice.
arts camp for kids, right? Because I'm kind of at that point where I'm trying to put back into the well so much as I can,
Yeah, yeah.
that I've been so lucky to drink from so many years. I'm like,
Well
okay,
said.
I gotta get back as much as I can. So, and that's one of the things we do. And I got to meet. There was a lot of Broadway people that came and volunteered and taught at the camp too. So I got to meet a few of them, and spending time with them. One one of the guys was like, you know what? I bet you'd be really good at this. And I'm like, really? And and so I partnered up with Steve Stockman and Rob Goldman, and we're about 5 songs deep into it, and we've got a lot of the script written, and I'm just having an absolute blast doing it because it's about as different as in my mindset. It's like everything when you're making a heavy record,
Yeah.
you're like, oh dude, that's super wimpy. Don't play that. Don't do that.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh God, that's way too heavy. Don't do that. Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, don't. And it's just been so fun being so it's all of a sudden just like completely shifting my, my brain and my psyche, which is what I need at this age to keep my brain going. So
Is there a title for it? And is it similar to Trans-Siberian Orchestra? And I have Joe Hoekstra, everybody coming on the show again in a few weeks.
no, it's we're going more sort of classic,
Okay.
Broadway sort of, that sort of, and we do not have a title yet because we're still sort of honing in on, clarity of characters and, and musical themes and threads through. Um, but it's, we're having a blast, and it's like, and I think for me, it's like, playing it for a couple of people, just some of the songs, and them going, "Wow, that's really good." And because and I usually, when I'm playing a record for somebody that I've done, I know whether it's working or not, you know.
Right.
And this is like, I don't know. Well, I think it's good, but and then having people go, "No, that's really good." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, cool. Yes." So it's exciting, fun, different, and we shall see. The jury's out, so to speak.
So there's no time frame. So
No, because
it's in
it's
the
like
works.
I'm still having to do my day job of making records for other artists. So I'm still all of that still at play, and I'm still like there's a new band that a couple of new things that I'm working on that are sort of under wraps, but
Okay.
we'll be making some like I said, it's like the beauty at this point in my life is that I I don't have to retire. I don't have to work, but I don't have to retire. So I can just simply choose to do what I
Selective.
want to do. Yeah, I can be very selective because I'm not interested at this point in my life at the as working at the same sort of pace and the same
Okay.
sort of intensity. uh and I always tell artists nowadays when I'm thinking about doing a record, if I'm not laughing my ass off and having a fun time and everybody just being a positive vibe, I'm out. you know
Yeah.
I gotta
Hmm.
I got I'm I don't the tortured soul thing. Like,
Yeah.
been there, done that. No thanks. No
Bunch
more.
of t-shirt.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. No more tortured soul stuff. It's mostly I got to know that I'm respecting what it is. That it's something that is somehow at least breaking new ground. Because that's the other thing you got to remember how many records I've done over the years. It's a
Right.
lot, and I gotta feel like I'm breaking new ground is something that's pushing the envelope because that's always the thing that I've worked at. And that's what's allowing me to still be competitive and relative at
Mm.
70 years old, that every
Yeah.
single day I'm always trying to stay as front edge as I can on technology, energy, sound, vibe, and so that's really the key, is that I always want to continue pushing forward until until I always say one day I'm just going to wake up and go, guys, I'm off to Italy. I'll see you later. And then it's like, bye
One
bye.
day you're just not going to wake up. That's true for us all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm still doing okay.
Well,
So it's like hopefully it's
you
going to
look
be a while.
great. You look great. You sound great. Last question I think is what's the opposite of unsubscribe?
Right. Yeah. It's like, yeah,
So what is the
exactly.
opposite of unsubscribe, Bob?
Subscribe to this podcast.
Right on. Hey, do you think John 5 or Nikki 6 would enjoy being interviewed by me on this channel?
Probably, probably.
You're the greatest, Bob.
That was a very non-committal committal. So
I know it was. I know it was. That's
yeah.
great. And
No,
no
I
worries.
trust me, I know how to play that. I know how to be political after all these years. So
Yeah. How can people reach out to you? Me and check out what you're doing. I know Facebook, you're on there. Website, see
I'm
what's going
I
on.
I will say this that I'm pretty bad at Facebook, but you can always try. But usually, and I hate to say this because it makes me sound old, but Facebook is primarily there to remind me of people's birthdays. So
That's great. Well, that's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
I
So
hadn't
it's
thought of it
like,
that way.
oh yeah, look, it's so and so's birthday. It's like happy birthday. Facebook and honestly, you know what? I generally I give out my emails simply because I really I like hearing from people. I like talking to people.
Hmm.
Um if you want, it's just bobmarlette5 at gmail.com. It's very
Wow,
simple.
you're gonna
Yeah.
get probably hit with a bunch, I'll tell you. So I'm
I'm good with that.
hey,
I'm good with that because I'm just sitting on the island, like smoking my cigars, chilling. So I got a few minutes to do that. But I will say this that I don't always reply,
right.
because
People
it's
have to
relative.
understand that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like it is absolutely nothing personal. It just, shit
Well,
happens.
well, a lot of times too, like when I send out email requests, I'll have to send out it through a different email, and they'll say, "Oh, geez, that went your email went to spam." Sometimes those things happen. You don't
Yeah.
even see them, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And it's like sometimes I don't see them just because when you have, in your
300 a day.
inbox, yeah, yeah, it's like you're like, uh, I don't feel like it today, and then they end up in the pile. So,
Yeah, it's just
but
life, right? You're a
yep,
busy guy.
it's all good. It's all good.
Well, thanks again for taking the time out, Bob, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your time on Martha's Vineyard and the great weather we're having. We had an ice storm. Did you guys get the ice storm?
We actually a couple days ago, yes, it was snowing here, and it was beautiful. It was like that's the thing. Is like, Edgartown, is where we live here on the island when we're here. Edgartown is like a movie set,
Oh,
like
wow.
with the Christmas lights up and the snow, and
Yeah,
it literally looks like one of those Hallmark Christmas movies. It's so beautiful here, and it's just we love it. Like I said, we come to the island whenever we when we can. And but my wife's so busy with her career. She's actually she just her band just did the new version of the Malcolm in the Middle theme song for the new reboot of Malcolm in the Middle
oh,
that's
wow.
coming out on Hulu, I think. And but she's done a million things. I mean, she was did the all female version of Ghostbusters. She did the Ghostbusters theme for that movie, and Simple Favor. She did the theme song for that. She's amazing in her own right. She does
Didn't she
so
just play
many.
in a bar or something or a club on the vineyard?
As a matter of fact, we did, but it wasn't on the vineyard. It was in her hometown of Hingham, Massachusetts. So we
Okay.
went and we went and played. We came off the island and did a show there, because she always ropes me into a few of those a year when I go, because she just loves to show up someplace and sing and do a show because she's crazy talented. She's so good.
Right on.
Obviously, I kind of won the wife lottery. Yeah, she amazing woman, amazing woman.
That's great. Once again, everybody, the great producer, engineer, personality, funny guy, Bob Marlette. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, my friend. Bye, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.